What's going on there, guys? Good afternoon. It's the Earthmaster here on this Saturday, August 13th, 2022 day, about 1:08 p.m. California time. Latest quake, a 2.8, showing up here right around the Caribbean plate here. Let's go ahead and check out the latest activity. By the way, has been pretty large scale in terms of uptick out here along the Philippine plate and along the southwestern portion of the Pacific plate here around the Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, and down through the Kermadec Trench. Seeing quite a bit of uptick and movement. We were kind of looking for that last night, and it looks like it's finally arrived in a big fashion. Let's go ahead and check out the latest activity here from the USGS on the flat scale model map here. Going to be the last 24 hours of earthquake activity, including a super deep 5.3 earthquake here into the Sivask, the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench area, Japan Trench regions. This is about 384 kilometers deep. So a pretty large movement earthquake way down there. And of course, a lot of times, folks, when we get this deep earthquake movement, we got to watch this surface area up towards the subduction zone itself, upstream, if you will, for some larger movement. This area has seen, it's been pretty quiet, but it's been quite a while since we've seen any large-scale movement on this specific area for quite a while. Now, overnight and this morning time frame, we've seen a pretty large uptick along the Philippines here, including that 5 point, looks like they downgraded it a little bit to a 5.8. This originally came in last night as a 6.1. Since then, we've seen quite a few more earthquakes within this region, including some earthquake activity around the Mariana Trench with a 4.6. That one coming in just a short time ago, 111 kilometers deep. So we're getting a lot of broad, deep scale activity all up and down this area of the Pacific plate and also the adjacent plates here around the Philippines into the Philippine Trench. Seeing quite a bit of deeper movement. Now down here through Papua New Guinea, about the same story. We did see within the last 2 hours, this came in just a little short time ago, 5.9 into the Papua New Guinea area. 51 kilometers deep into this region. Looks like there was some activity as well last night, 4.5 at 47 kilometers there within the same region as this 5.9 that we just seen this afternoon. So things definitely getting rolling on the area of the southwestern portion here of the plate, also around the Vanuatu area. Look at that, quite a few fours and some up, at least one upper five kicking off earlier this morning. It looks like a 5.8, that earthquake north of Port Vila. This one down here though, 5.1, and the most recent quake up here, back up and down in this area of the trench. Notice that trench area, some deeper movement again occurring within that area. Now down here along the Kermadec Trench, this here is a little on the sketchy side because there's a lot more earthquake activity than what the USGS is showing down here. They're only showing a 5.1 at 10 kilometers and pretty shallow earthquake, but I do want to bring up the EMSC model. We'll take a look at some of the activity kind of ramping up down here around the New Zealand area. This area did see some movement yesterday and overnight, talking about threes, quite a few threes, and I'm sure there's some twos in there as well. There's at least another 4.8 from yesterday's time frame that doesn't look like the USGS is putting on their map, but it's showing up here on the EMSC model. So definitely some activity ramping up there in the area of the Kermadec Trench and the kind of towards the southern end of the Tonga Trench, although that region right now looks a little on the quiet side. Over here, again around the Philippines on the EMSC model map, quite a few threes, quite a few fours showing up in the region. A lot the USGS not issuing there, so again, it's just it's one of those things. They tend to only put out, I guess, some main quakes, so to speak. But overall, I think we all can agree a pretty broad, large-scale event unfolding right now along the Pacific plate. It's been awfully quiet here along these regions prior to last night. It seems like when it got kicked up around midnight or so, we started things off with a that 6.1, which got downgraded to a 5.8. But it seems like since then we got the ball rolling in terms of the earthquake movement and the Pacific Plate showing quite a bit of activity here. Again, with all this movement here, we could be looking at something bigger brewing in the area, especially with all the deeper activity we're seeing around the trenches. In an area that I'm watching pretty closely, and I've been saying it since the first of the year, is the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench. This area right here hasn't had a large-scale event in quite some time. Japan, the Japan Trench definitely seen some sixes earlier this year, but this section right here, right about here, it's a major buildup area of slip rate. I can't remember what the accumulated slip rate is per year, but it doesn't take a lot of time for this area to build up enough strain for a larger earthquake. You got to remember these deeper movement quakes as well put a lot of strain upstream, and that's an area to watch pretty closely for a possibly larger event in that region. An area that we were watching prior to all this activity here along the Philippine Plate and southeastward was the West Coast. So what do we got for the West Coast overnight? Looks like we did have some activity up into the Washington area near Bickleton, Washington. Never heard of it. 3.1 at 12 kilometers. But that's about it showing up there throughout the Pacific Northwest. Some microquakes in the Mount St. Helens area. Another area that we've been watching here along the coast is the Cascadia. And things kind of ramped up here. Looks like early this morning as well. In this region, a couple threes kicking off here, some deep earthquakes, not super deep, but this is below the surface down there into the subduction zone itself. That's why I know these are subduction zone quakes, because of their depths there. If it was at the surface or other areas to the south or much further east, we could look at these fault systems, but this whole area right here is associated with the Cascadia megathrust offshore. And a lot what goes on with the tremor activity affects the regions upstream a little bit and also at the surface. So we did see, like I mentioned, we did see a little activity ramping up, but it since then has kind of dropped off. It seems with all the activity we've been looking at much further away from this area, and I'm talking about all the movement over here along the Solomon Islands and the Philippines, and now the Sea of Osk region in the Japan area, north of Japan. So I think we're kind of looking at possibly seeing less activity along the West Coast now that we're getting that forward push of the Pacific Plate, kind of moving in this direction here towards the northwest. That does kind of play in part with the teeter-totter effect that I chat about here a lot on the channel. Things are definitely leaning on this side of the board for it looks like, at least for the foreseeable future, considering this broad-scale activity kicking off right now around the Pacific Plate. Let's see. Let me look at the rest of the West Coast aside from these earthquakes here. Nothing really showing up in the last hour, and a lot of this activity is from yesterday, prior to all this movement along the Western Pacific and the Philippine Plate. All that activity kicking up here, kind of relieving some stuff here along the West Coast. But I did notice here, it seems as though now that we're getting a lot of activity ramping up here along the Vanuatu area, Papua New Guinea, around this area here, southwestern portion of the plate, we notice all that activity kind of that was working its way up north here, Cascadia area, seeing all those quakes. I noticed a little bit more activity kicking up this morning on the southern portion of the state, and that could have something to do with, of course, all this activity here. The activity I'm referring to is right around the Brawley seismic zone. We did see a 2.8 and a little bit of a swarm starting much earlier this morning, but it's hard to say if this is going to turn into a large-scale event or not. A lot of times we do see some swarms here on the Brawley seismic zone, and again, that's only a very small fraction away from the southern segment of the San Andreas Fault, and that's where the sleeping giant sleeps, and hopefully it will stay asleep for quite a while. We don't want to wake up that 8.1 magnitude earthquake that's coming to SoCal one of these days. That's going to be this segment right here. All right, so things temporarily coming to a halt now that we got this broad scale activity here to the west. So a couple things at play here with all the deeper movement. Got to remember these subduction zone quakes here adds further strain upstream. When you move one section of the plate here down south, ultimately it's going to make some adjustment, right? Since we've seen all this activity here, it only makes sense for this to kind of fill in up here, and that's kind of what we're seeing around the Japan Trench and the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench, but at deeper levels. So that kind of leads me to believe that we could be seeing something here soon up towards the surface areas. That's on a little bit larger side. The rest of the states, folks, not a whole lot going on there. We did have some activity around the let's see, Tennessee, northern Alabama, it looks like. A 2.7 kicking off near Hazel Green, Alabama, 13 kilometers earlier this morning time frame. Looks like a few folks did report feeling this earthquake. It has been reviewed. Only, like I say, only a small fraction of folks reported feeling it in the area. Near the Sand Mountain area, I'm sure there's some definitely some fault systems running through here. You can kind of see them actually on the map there, but they're not listed as far as it being a specific fault here on the USGS map. But aside from that, not a whole lot as we work our way eastward. Things kind of on the mellow side throughout the Puerto Rico area. Only 19 earthquakes, and looks like the majority of these from earlier this morning. Latest one 2.3 a few hours ago. South America region, I guess that's an area we should be watching as well, right? With all the Pacific plate movement, but we're not really seeing it. Most of the activity has been confined up north here into the Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador area. And again, this activity from last night, though. One from early this morning, 4.6, but overall things kind of on the mellow, quiet side for 4.0 and above. But got to remember, there's definitely some earthquake activity up there in this region, down there, I should say, for me. That's on the lower magnitude scale. Quite a few 2s and 3s up and down the board, and that's very typical of the major plate boundaries there, the subduction zones. But up here, something we got to watch pretty closely. Could be filling in this blank spot here pretty soon. All right, Yellowstone National Park, a little bit of activity overnight, it looks like. I'm still kind of leaning towards that this is some type of weather event last night, this area right here, but it's hard to tell. There was quite a few thunderstorms throughout this region, and it's hard to tell in this mix when it's so cluttered like that, if these are discrete earthquakes or if it's just all the wind, the heavy rain, the thunder. That's kind of what it looks like, because it dramatically dropped off. But these right here are earthquakes indeed. These are very well-defined earthquakes, and they're localized to this station here. That signature, those readings, not this one, these readings we were looking at last night, definitely showed up across a good portion of the northwestern portion of the Yellowstone Park area. But it's hard to say if this is just a swarming event or some type of weather event. But we'll check it a little bit later on this afternoon. I think they got more thunderstorms in the forecast in that area, and we'll see if that kicks up again. Actually, it kind of looks like it may be kicking up here again. You guys see that? So let's go ahead and check the Windy app real quick. I need to find me a better radar. Here, me being a weatherman, I think I'd have a little bit better radar map on here, and I can pull them up. But Windy is a app I like to go through and check out just really quickly any events. So rain and thunder throughout the area right now looks pretty active. Looks like quite a few thunderstorms out here kicking up here, and that does coincide. This is Yellowstone, western Yellowstone, and it is mostly here around the northwestern corner of the park, extending down south as well. So that activity just brewing up. I'm sure it's the afternoon time frame, that monsoonal moisture coming up, getting things firing up. And it does, believe it or not, those thunderstorms, they show up on seismograph stations, folks. That they do. May not show up on all of them, but wherever they're located at. You can also see it over here kind of showing up a little bit, but not quite as intense as yesterday. The majority of the activity right now seems to be within this area. And this station right here could be just a little bit more sensitive in terms of picking up that data. That is thunderstorms over the area, western Yellowstone region. And here in the west, dry as can be, hot. It's supposed to be up between 100 and 110 degrees, folks. Anyone want to buy me a plane ticket out of here? I'm not even joking. Make that 2 plane tickets so me and Miss Mimi's can get out of the west coast. I do not like it here. Too hot. If we're going to have heat, might as well have some thunderstorms in the afternoon, right? But no. We could have this all through August and even September. September we have highs sometimes in the low 100s. So, yeah, man, I don't like it. It puts a damper on my mood, you know. All right, what else we got here, folks? Earthquakes Canada. Let's see what we got for this area real quick. Not a whole lot throughout the western portion of BC region. Some older movement here around Quebec. I believe that's the quake here from yesterday or the day before. Looks like yesterday time frame. A little 2.3. But aside from that, things kind of mellow up there in the northern portion there of the plate. Solar weather activity, things kind of ramping up here. We are looking at some elevated conditions kicking up. I was watching this sunspot growing last night. 3076 is kind of getting its act together. There's a lot of intermixing there, or at least growing, of the polarity of these fields here. These darker colors indicating different polarities. Also down here, 3079 is getting its act together as well. I think these 2 sunspots right now pose a good threat, possibly, of seeing an M flare. 3076, 3079 have a good potential. Looks like they have raised the current solar flare threat. 25% chance for an M flare, 90% chance of a C flare. See how fast these flares grow? I mean, these sunspots grow? They can definitely grow pretty quickly, but they better do their thing because they are facing Earth right now. But after today or tomorrow, these things are going to be facing away from us. So if we want a cool flare, we need to do it now, guys. 3076, 3079. Okay, so the solar flare detection chart right now is almost consistent with quite a few C flares. Notice that? Getting up there close to the M flare category. We've had a couple upper C flares popping off throughout the morning time frame and last night. And it's pretty elevated, so we could see these things spark off some larger flares here today. Good possibility. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. There is that coronal hole that is kind of turning towards us and facing us. Will be facing us. It's pretty darn close. That will allow some high solar wind stream flowing from the sun to reach Earth. I mean, it stretches from the northern down to the southern part of the hemisphere here on the sun. And kind of a narrow window, but this thing's pretty deep. It's pretty pretty broad, I should say, in terms of being able to shoot us with some solar wind stream. And that will definitely change the 3-day geomagnetic forecast here in the future. Right now, things green across the board, but again, as we know, on the sun, things are drastically changing. And right now, I think we better watch those sunspots. All right, guys, have a good day. Enjoy your weekend. We will be back a little bit later on this evening. And welcome to the new members out there. We've got a couple new members overnight. They are automatically entered into tomorrow's drawing. Today's the last day you can get in as a member for a chance to win a $40 Amazon gift card. That's right, $40. So I think it costs, what, $2.99 to join the channel. Hey, that's a pretty good deal. And the odds right now to win are pretty high for anyone that joins in because we only have a small pool of members currently. So jump on board. That way you can be entered into the drawing that we will do live. Not going to pull a winner and say, hey, here's a winner. No, we always do everything live. That way there's no ifs, ands, or buts. You know, it's a scam. It's not a scam. It's definitely legit. Me and Missy Mimi's do it live, and we'll do it tomorrow. But get in, join that channel, join this channel here for some extra perks and whatnot, including monthly drawings. Those are monthly drawings. So yeah, all right, guys, have a good day. Stay safe out there. I know we had some activity out here around the Mediterranean last night. These red circles indicating the older activity. Looks like we've had a little bit of push of westward movement still off the coast of Morocco region. Quite a few 2s and 3s kicking up there on board. But between this spot and this area here along the Philippine plate, there still leaves a lot of open plate boundaries here that I'm sure is building up some strain up through this region. So Got to watch those quiet zones, right? But also at the same time, you got to watch where these earthquakes are striking and how deep they are. The Kuril-Kamchatka Trench, Japan Trench area looks like it's getting ready. So we'll watch it pretty closely, guys. Have a good day. Stay safe. And again, we'll chat to you later tonight with the Saturday night party night update. Peace out, guys.